Hello and welcome to the Fighting Spirit Podcast. As always, I'm Jason, and I might be sounding a little weird. I am nursing a little bit of a cold at the moment, so pardon my voice. But we're going to be going over the picks here for UFC Fight Night, where Jack Hermansson is going to be taking on Jared Cannonier, in which should be an amazing contest taking place in Copenhagen, Denmark. A lovely city, been there myself. I'm looking forward to this one. Let's get into it. Here's the show. Alright, so we have some debuters that are not going to be on here, but we have 7 good solid fights to go over, so not really the entire card. We have quite a few debuting events here, but we'll do as many. Oh no, actually, I'm lying. We have 8 events in total. So let's start off here with the main event. So we have Jack Hermansson taking on Jared Cannonier in that main event contest, and this is a very interesting fight to crunch out. So when we look over, we have kind of what I think honestly is a little bit of a very heavy power puncher in Jared Cannonier, the killer gorilla, and I think that even though his volume isn't as good, if he connects with you, he does put you out. Going up against a guy in Hermansson who I think is a little more well-rounded, more of a volume striker, somebody who, maybe TKOs his way to victory instead of KOs, but has that grappling and that great submission game in his back pocket. And I think that ultimately is how he's going to end up defeating Cannonier. So Cannonier has the power. If he touches you, you can go out. But I think Hermansson has the takedown ability to get this thing to the mat. I think he's a big, powerful 185er. Maybe not quite at the level of Cannonier, but he's still very strong. His grappling is good, and he's able to sap a gas tank. However, I just want to throw out there, we have an MMA lab fighter in Cannonier, so he is getting very, very good training. I just ultimately think that the striking volume and the ability of Hermansson to get this thing to the mat is going to be where he can accentuate his winning ways. Also, this guy does not have a loss since 2017, where he lost to Thiago Santos via TKO. So we've seen him go up against guys with heavy hands and not do as well, but he has wins over Talis Latis, Gerald Mirsic, David Branch, and Ronaldo Souza. We know Branch, he got popped for PEDs, but he also knocked out Thiago himself. So he clearly can hang with guys that do have some power, and so I think he's going to be able to dismantle the killer gorilla. So we are picking Jack Hermansson to pick up a win in Copenhagen. In our co-main event, we're going to have 2 very evenly matched fighters. One in Gunnar Nelson taking on Gilbert Burns. Both of them train in very good gyms. We have SBG Ireland for Nelson, and we have Hard Knocks 365 for Burns, and I think they're relatively even because of that. I also believe that they have very similar grappling games. So obviously we know Nelson, he's not much of a striker. He uses it just to set up his takedowns, but he has a hard time doing this if somebody has a little bit of grappling experience, a little bit of hand fighting like we saw him with Leon Edwards, and I think he's going to run into a similar situation against Gilbert Burns. Gilbert Burns has good striking, maybe not quite the level of Leon Edwards, but he has good enough striking, he has good enough grappling game, and I think he's going to be able to hang with the Gunny if this thing goes to the mat, if it stays standing, and I think that he's a good pressure fighter that could potentially put a hurting on Gunnar Nelson. So we know he has problems with pressure. Look at his loss to Ponzinibbio. Look at the way he was pressured by Edwards. Whereas we look over at Gilbert Burns, guy hasn't lost since Dan Hooker, and he's beaten Mercier, Alexei Gonchenko, and Mike Davis. Maybe not the with Mercier, it is similar enough style to Nelson that, maybe not as wrestling heavy for Nelson, but I can definitely see how they could match up and we could see a pathway to victory similar to the way he defeated Auburn Mercier. So ultimately in this one, I gotta pick Gilbert Burns. I think his gym's a little bit better than SBG. I think he's a little bit better well-rounded. We know that he has a more consistent winning way. He hasn't had a loss since July 2018, and we are picking him in Denmark in this contest. Crack open a Carlsberg because this is my fight of the night. Lando Groovy Venata taking on Mark Jacasey, the Bone Crusher. Both these guys, amazing gym. Jackson Wake versus America Top Team. That's a stalemate. When I look over at the submission game, we got edge to Venata. He's got his 5 submissions over his 10 wins, and we know that the guy is tough as hell, but I think he's going to ultimately want to keep this one standing because I think that's what Jacasey's going to be able to do. I think that Jacasey's going to be able to maybe shuck the takedowns, keep it standing, but he's going to have to deal with the volume of Groovy Venata. I think that Venata is going to be able to overwhelm Jacasey here. We know how tough Venata is. We've seen him in his contests like against Cody Ferguson and Drakkar Klose, contests that were close, and he's got back on track with his win back in February of 2019 against Marcos Mariano via Kimura. I think he's going to be able to overwhelm Jacasey. However, if Jacasey cannot keep it standing, he's going to be overwhelmed on the ground. I think that Venata is going to be able to pick up a great victory here. He's training at a great gym. I think that he's seeing this top-level talent, and I think Venata is going to be able to make a claim, a stake, that he is back in lightweight, and he's going to pick up a great win over Mark Jacasey. Crack open a Carlsberg. We're picking one up for the groovy one. All right, another very similar contest. We have the great Sair Bazurhara taking on Ismail, the Austrian Wonder Boy Nurdiev. And so the Austrian Wonder Boy, when we saw him come in against Chance Rencounter, I thought that this guy was going to be a wrestling, just over-the-top right-hand knockout artist, and that was just not the case. He looked very green. He didn't quite look like he was ready to take on Rencounter, and I think that he's not going to be ready to take on Bazurhara either. I think that Bazurhara has the little bit better hands here. His 14 KOs over his 24 wins. He's a lot older, and I think that experience is going to come into play here. And only 23 years of age, even though he has 21 fights under his belt, I don't think that he has the experience to deal with a guy like Bazurhara. And I think Bazurhara, with his own 6 submissions, is going to be able to threaten Nurdiev if this thing does make it into a ground position. Both have good gyms as well. We have the Top Team Salzburg, so it's affiliation with Top Team, I believe, American Top Team, and we got the Jackson Wink and Bazurhara, but I ultimately like the Jackson Wink fighter here a little bit more. I think that the great Bazurhara is going to pick up a W in Copenhagen. All right, in our next contest, we're going to have Macy Chiasson taking on Lena, the Elbow Queen Landsberg, and this is going to be, I think, not a good night for the Elbow Queen. So we know that Macy Chiasson, even though she has a very limited run of experiences in the UFC, she has a great finish rate. I mean, all of her fights in the UFC have been stoppages. Sarah Morris, Gina Mazzani, and Panini Kinzad, all great wins. Whereas we look over at the Elbow Queen, she has a hard time getting wins, or at least stoppages and wins as well. She's very street, win and loss, very 50-50. And I don't think that she's going to be able to hang with Chiasson. Chiasson has great power for her size, and I think she's going to be able to potentially put the lights out on Landsberg. Landsberg might land some decent shots, but we've seen Chiasson tested a little bit in her Sarah Morris fight. I think she has a decent chin, and I think she'll be able to eat the shots from the Elbow Queen. We also have the takedown game, which I think could be there, in the submission game for Chiasson, who, I think has a clear-cut advantage here over the Elbow Queen, who has 0 submissions over her 9 wins. And I think that Chiasson is going to be the ultimately better, more well-rounded fighter that's going to be able to shut the door here. I think we're picking up a stoppage victory for Chiasson in Copenhagen. All right, this next one hurts a little bit. So we got the Hulk, Ion Kudalaba, taking on Khalil the Warhorse Roundtree. So I want to pick Roundtree in this one, but I can't. The numbers don't back up Roundtree, they back up Kudalaba. And I saw what he did when he fought Glover Teixeira, and I was not impressed by Kudalaba, but when I saw Khalil Roundtree come back and fight Eric Anders, and even when he did a little bit against Johnny Walker, and of course his victory with Goan Saki, I thought that he was a better fighter. I don't think the stats shake out that Ion Kudalaba is going to win this fight. The prediction is there. He has great output. He has some submission game, whereas we know he has none in Roundtree. So I think ultimately he's a slightly better, well-rounded fighter, and that's why it shows here. But Roundtree has been working on his Muay Thai. His leg kicks were amazing against Eric Anders. It'll be interesting to see what he does against such a heavy, competent, striker like Ion. But I don't know if Roundtree can be beaten here. I ultimately don't. The numbers are going to say Ion, the Hulk, but I got a hard time. I would have a hard time putting money on this one. I would probably walk away. This is definitely, I think, going to be my chance taker or don't touch it of the night for Cutelaba and Roundtree. So my heart says Roundtree. My numbers say Cutelaba. You pick what you want to go out on that one. I got to ultimately side with the numbers. So if Cutelaba wins, I'll be counting it as a win. But I'll be a little bit sad because I do like Roundtree. I'd like to see him pick up a victory. But, we'll see how things play out in Denmark. It is going to be an interesting one for sure. So ultimately, I got to pick the Hulk Cutelaba in that one. All right, in our next contest, we have another good one. We have OSP, Oven St. Preux, taking on Michael Olenstruck. And I think this is going to be an interesting contest that definitely stays on the feet. So we know that OSP does have a little bit of a submission game. However, I think that he's going to stay on the feet here where Michael also wants to be. And in this contest, I think ultimately Michael is going to get the job done despite having a huge reach disadvantage. OSP has a 6-inch reach advantage. I just don't think he's going to be able to utilize it to its fullest abilities. I think that Michael is going to be able to prove himself competent enough with the striking that he's going to be able to out-technique and take away from those, physical abilities of OSP and ultimately pick up a win here. I think that he also has, equal gyms here for these guys. Knoxville MMA is not one that I'm giving extra points to, whereas, our Polish fighter trains out of a Polish gym, and so I think they're even there. And Michael just has that higher fight IQ, that higher winning percentage, hasn't lost since 2014. I got to side with the guy that's going on the streak. We are picking Michael Olenstruck, the Lord, in Copenhagen. All right, in our last contest, we're going to be going over on the evening. We have Alan M. Medovsky taking on John, the Welsh Wrecking Machine Phillips. And so I am picking in this one the Welsh Wrecking Machine. He does have the better name, of course, but I think he also has the slightly better stats. So we haven't seen much out of Allen, at least in the UFC. He's striking. I don't think was really that great in his last contest with Jotko, and I don't think his grappling looked all that good either. Even though we've seen a lot of losses out of Phillips, he's still here. He obviously wants to keep his contract, and he had knockout after knockout coming into the UFC. He's only been choked out, and I don't think that Allen's going to be able to do that. Allen has no submissions over his 8 wins, and I think that we're finally going to see a fight that the Welsh Wrecking Machine can win because I think it's going to stay standing. 18 knockouts over his 21 wins. I think that that's where his core competency is, and so I think we're going to see it on display in Copenhagen. I think he's got great striking output. He just hasn't been able to put it all together. He also does get hit a little bit. He does take some shots to give some shots. That might be where Allen might be able to take advantage, but he is an SPG Ireland fighter. I think he's going to pick up a W here, and so we are picking John Phillips, the Welsh Wrecking Machine, also hella awesome fight name, in Copenhagen. All right, one more time. We have Jack Hermansson, Gilbert Burns, Ion Kubaleta, Michael Olenstruck, John Phillips, the Welsh Wrecking Machine, Sair Buzatahara, Macy Chiasen, and Lando Venata to round things out. All right, you can get in touch with the Fighting Spirit Podcast at fightingspiritpodcast@gmail.com. You can get in touch with me on Twitter at MMAFightPick01. We also have a Patreon. We should have a beer review coming out this week. That really snuck up on me. I have to get on top of that. And, so we'll be coming back with the retrospective, but I do want to throw out a little bit of a note here that I'm just going to say personally to be upfront with you guys. I am not going to be gambling on this event personally. I am calling it, I'm a little bit disappointed because the international nature of our last, basically it was the judging. It came down to the judging. I thought I lost more than I should have, and I don't think I'm going to gamble on this one. I think I'm going to sit there on the sidelines and wait until Whitaker versus Adesanya and jump back into that one. Even though that one is also international, I think it's appropriate for the pay-per-view to get back in at that point. I feel more comfortable, so I think I'm going to take a week off, and I'm just going to sit, and just crunch the fights and see what the outcomes are. Also, as a note, for anybody listening out there, these fights are going to start early. They are taking place in Copenhagen, so I think they're starting at 11 a.m. Eastern time. So just be aware of that. If you're trying to watch the card at night, it won't be on at that point. Be watching a rerun. I will still give a retrospective for the picks and everything, and we'll still have a regular show. But I don't think I'm going to gamble on it. I think I'm going to touch the NFL stuff. One of my NFL picks worked out well today. The Houston Texans picked up a win, and that crunched out well, and the numbers are looking pretty good for that. We actually only lost one of the 1 o'clock games, and we took some L's in the 4 o'clocks, but we're looking good here Sunday night, and we're above 50% there, so I'm happy about those. And just kind of branching out, trying some different stuff. Still doing the UFC, still trying to seek out those top picks. Watch, I'm not gonna bet on this one. I'll run the table. That's exactly what would happen if I did sit on the sidelines, right? Hey, if you're taking the picks, I'm confident about them. I'm just sitting on the sidelines because those judges, those international events, I don't think it's a good one to play with. Anyways, that's my pin on that. Until I speak with you again next time, though, happy fight picking.